Do you remember the candies of your childhood? The ones you'd beg your parents for at the grocery store checkout, or trade with friends on the playground at recess? For so many of us, candy wasn't just a sweet treat. It was a piece of growing up in America. It was Halloween nights, school lunch surprises, summer trips to the corner store with a pocket full of change. But here's the thing about candy: it doesn't always last. Some of our favorite childhood sweets have disappeared entirely, quietly discontinued when sales dipped or when health regulations changed. Others were banned outright, pulled from shelves over safety concerns, or even controversies that nobody saw coming. And yet, we still remember them. There's something powerful about nostalgia, especially when it's tied to food. A candy wrapper can take us back 30 years in an instant. A long-lost flavor can make us feel like kids again. And when those candies vanish forever, it's like losing a little piece of our own history. Today, we're looking back at 15 banned and discontinued American candies you'll never taste again. Some were strange, some were silly, some were ahead of their time, and some disappeared for reasons that may surprise you. Each one tells a story, not just about candy, but about America itself and the way our culture has changed over the decades. So grab a seat and maybe a snack as we unwrap some sweet and sometimes shocking memories. Point 1. Kinder Surprise Eggs, banned in the U.S. There are few candies in the world as enchanting as the Kinder Surprise egg. For millions of children outside the United States, these little chocolate eggs were more than just candy, they were an experience. You'd peel back the foil wrapper, crack open the milk chocolate shell, and inside you'd find a tiny yellow capsule. That capsule held a surprise toy, something to build, collect, or treasure. It wasn't just sweet, it was magical. But for American kids, the Kinder Egg was the candy we heard about, but never got to taste. That's because in the 1930s, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration made it illegal to sell candy with non-food items hidden inside. Regulators feared that children could choke on the toy parts, and so the Kinder Egg was banned from American shelves. While the rest of the world grew up with this tradition, Americans had to settle for seeing them in travel videos, overseas commercials, or maybe in the suitcase of a relative returning from Europe. And yet, that ban only added to the legend. For many, the Kinder Egg became a symbol of something we couldn't have, a forbidden fruit wrapped in chocolate. The irony? Millions of kids across Europe enjoyed them safely for decades, sparking endless debates about whether the U.S. ban was necessary or just overprotective. Today, Kinder has tried to find a workaround with Kinder Joy, a split plastic egg that separates the toy from the treat. But for those who grew up overseas, or those who once snuck a real Kinder Egg through customs, nothing will ever compare to that moment of cracking open the chocolate shell to find a secret toy inside. And while America never got to fully taste the magic, the memory of Kinder Surprise Eggs lives on as one of the sweetest bans in candy history. Next up, a candy that wasn't banned by law, but by sheer bad luck, when its name collided with a tragedy that changed America. Point 2. AIDS Diet Candy. There was once a time when candy wasn't just for fun, it was sold as health food. In the 1970s and early 80s, one of the most popular diet aids in America was something called AIDS Diet Candy. It came in neat little caramel-flavored chews, individually wrapped like a sweet indulgence. The idea was simple: chew one before a meal to curb your appetite, and the pounds would melt away. For many Americans, especially women who grew up in the age of slimness equals beauty, AIDS was more than candy. It was part of a cultural moment when diet fads swept the nation. Commercials proudly declared, AIDS helps you take off weight and keep it off. Housewives, office workers, even young women flipped through magazines and saw ads promising control and confidence in every chewy square. And for a while it worked. AIDS became a household name, as common on a kitchen counter as a box of cereal. But then came the 1980s, and with it, a tragic twist of fate. A new, terrifying epidemic was sweeping across America. Its name? Almost overnight, AIDS Diet Candy went from popular to unmarketable. No matter how effective the product was, No matter how loyal its customers had been, the name itself became toxic. Sales plummeted. Efforts to rebrand failed. By the mid-80s, AIDS disappeared from shelves completely, remembered only as an ironic casualty of history. For those who grew up with it, AIDS recalls a time of diet trends, catchy commercials, and a candy that seemed harmless, until language itself turned it into something no one could touch. And from a candy that vanished because of its name, we moved to one that disappeared because it was literally too sharp for children to eat. Point 3. Astropops. In the space-obsessed 1960s, candy makers found a way to capture the wonder of the space race and put it right into kids' hands. The result was Astropops, a brightly colored, rocket-shaped lollipop that looked as if it had been launched straight from Cape Canaveral. Astropops weren't just candy, they were a piece of the era. Developed by two rocket scientists who left their jobs in the aerospace industry, these lollipops came layered in bold stripes of green, red, and yellow, tapering to a hard, pointed tip. Kids loved them not only for their long-lasting sweetness, but also because holding one felt like holding a little rocket of their own. Commercials leaned into the theme, showing wide-eyed children unwrapping their rockets to the stars. For many kids of the 70s, Astropops were a symbol of summer, the kind of candy you'd buy at the pool snack bar or from a corner store after school. They lasted forever, turning lips sticky and tongues bright red or green. Parents may have grumbled, but children adored them. But eventually, Astropops ran into a problem, one that had nothing to do with flavor. Schools began banning them after complaints that their hard, pointed tips could be dangerous. Some parents even claimed they were sharp enough to poke an eye. By the early 2000s, the original version of Astropops had disappeared from shelves. Attempts at relaunches never quite captured the same magic. Today, collectors hunt for vintage wrappers and tins, while adults remember them with a mix of joy and disbelief. A candy shaped like a rocket, designed by rocket scientists, lost not to changing tastes, but because it was literally too sharp to be safe. And from a candy that was too dangerous to last, we turned to one that was killed by something stranger, a family feud over peanut butter itself. Point 4. PB Max. In the late 1980s, candy lovers were introduced to a bar that seemed destined for greatness. It was called PB Max, and for peanut butter fans, it was a dream come true. Imagine a thick layer of creamy peanut butter, blended with oats for texture, set on top of a whole-grain cookie, and smothered in rich milk chocolate. It was indulgent, hearty, and unlike anything else on the shelf. Launched in 1989 by Mars, the makers of classics like Snickers and M&M's, PB Max quickly built a loyal following. Commercials proudly declared, "We don't do peanut butter, but we do PB Max." And for a brief moment, it seemed like Mars had struck gold. By the early 1990s, PB Max had sold over $50 million worth of bars, a massive success by any measure. So why did it vanish? Not because sales were weak, and not because the recipe failed. According to long-standing industry rumors, the Mars family simply didn't like peanut butter. They considered it too low-class for their brand, and despite PB Max's popularity, the family pulled the plug. In the candy world, that decision remains one of the strangest ever made, a best-selling candy bar, discontinued at the height of its success, not because of the market, but because of personal taste. For fans, PB Max became a legend. People still reminisce about the chewy cookie base, the salty peanut butter, and the rich chocolate coating. Some even try to recreate it at home with copycat recipes, hoping to taste that memory again. But the real PB Max is gone, remembered as the candy bar that wasn't defeated by sales or safety, but by a Point 5. Bonkers Fruit Chews. In the colorful world of 1980s candy aisles, few treats felt as fun, or as over-the-top, as Bonkers Fruit Chews. These square-shaped candies were chewy on the outside with a burst of fruity filling on the inside. But what made them unforgettable wasn't just the taste, it was the way they were marketed. Bonkers commercials were wild, zany, and larger than life. One of the most famous showed people taking a bite, only to have giant fruit literally fall from the sky and flatten them into the ground. A lady in a rocking chair would bite into one, and suddenly a massive watermelon or strawberry would crash down with cartoonish force. It was silly, it was outrageous, and kids loved every second of it. The candy itself came in bold flavors: grape, watermelon, strawberry, and even exotic mixes for the time. Each bite gave you that double-layer experience: soft chew followed by a juicy center that felt like a little explosion of flavor. For many children of the 80s and early 90s, Bonkers were a lunchbox treasure and a favorite to trade with friends. But like so many candies, Bonkers' magic didn't last. By the mid-1990s, sales began to slump. The commercials stopped airing, the formula was quietly tweaked, and eventually the brand disappeared from shelves altogether. A few attempts at revival have come and gone, but none captured the same excitement. Today, Bonkers lives on in memory and in grainy YouTube commercials, where the sight of fruit crashing from the sky instantly transports people back to childhood. It wasn't just candy, it was theater, packaged in a chewy square. And from a candy remembered for its wild commercials, we turn to one that was small, simple, and bite-sized, but left fans heartbroken when it vanished. Point 6. Butterfinger BBs. In the 1990s, Butterfinger fans got a treat that felt tailor-made for kids: Butterfinger BBs. Instead of the classic bar, these were tiny, bite-sized balls of crispy, peanut buttery goodness coated in chocolate. They came in bright yellow bags that stood out on the candy aisle, and for many kids, they were the ultimate movie snack, poured into popcorn tubs or shared during sleepovers. Butterfinger BBs weren't just candy, they were part of pop culture. The Simpsons were already the face of Butterfinger, and ads featuring Bart Simpson telling people to "nobody better lay a finger on my Butterfinger" carried over to these bite-sized versions. The BBs made eating Butterfinger fun and easy. No more snapping the bar into pieces, no more sticky fingers. Just pop a few into your mouth and you were good to go. But that convenience came with a downside. Fans loved the taste, but the coating melted quickly, leaving hands and pockets smeared with chocolate. Parents complained, theaters grumbled, and by the mid-2000s, sales began to dip. In 2006, Butterfinger BBs were officially discontinued, leaving behind a wave of disappointed fans. For years, people begged Nestle to bring them back. Some even started petitions online, while others tried to recreate the magic by breaking up regular Butterfingers into homemade BBs. In 2009, Nestle introduced Butterfinger Bites, but longtime fans insist they were never the same. The BBs had a texture, a size, and a nostalgia that couldn't be replicated. Today, Butterfinger BBs are remembered as one of the most missed candies of the 90s. For an entire generation, just seeing the yellow bag sparks memories of arcades, sleepovers, and trips to the video rental store. And from a candy that melted away too soon, we turn to one that was tiny, clever, and ironically, recalled for being a choking hazard. Point 7. Lifesavers Holes. In the early 1990s, the makers of Lifesavers came up with a clever idea. If a Lifesaver has a hole in the middle, why not sell the holes themselves? And so Lifesavers holes were born: tiny, colorful candies packaged in small flip-top plastic tubes that fit perfectly in a pocket. For kids, they were more than just candy. Lifesavers holes felt like a secret stash, portable, shareable, and fun to rattle around. The flavors were the same fruity favorites you'd expect from the classic rolls, but the novelty of eating the holes gave them an instant cool factor. Many kids proudly carried them to school, popping one in their mouths during class when the teacher wasn't looking. The packaging, too, was part of the magic. Those little plastic containers were practically toys in themselves. You could reuse them for storing coins, paper clips, or even as makeshift noisemakers once the candy was gone. For a brief moment in the 90s, Lifesavers holes felt like one of the most exciting candies on the shelf. But then came the downfall. In 1991, reports surfaced of children choking on the candies, and suddenly, the clever marketing twist became a public relations nightmare. Ironically, The very name Lifesavers now stood alongside headlines about choking hazards. The product was recalled, and though attempts were made to bring it back, the momentum was gone. Within a few years, Lifesavers holes quietly disappeared forever. For those who remember them, Lifesavers holes spark a bittersweet nostalgia, a candy that was clever, fun, and short-lived. The tubes, the colors, the idea itself, all gone in a flash. And from a candy undone by safety fears, we move to one that disappeared after its celebrity tie-in faded from the spotlight. In the late 1970s, few athletes were as electrifying as Reggie Jackson. Nicknamed Mr. October for his clutch home runs in the World Series, Jackson was larger than life, and at the height of his fame, he even got his own candy bar. The Reggie bar debuted in 1978, just as Jackson was leading the New York Yankees to glory. It was a round, flat disc of caramel and peanuts covered in milk chocolate. Simple, sweet, and satisfying. Fans could pick one up at the ballpark or local stores, and every bite felt like a tribute to the slugger who seemed unstoppable at the plate. One of the most famous moments came during opening day at Yankee Stadium in 1978. As Reggie Jackson jogged onto the field, fans threw thousands of Reggie bars onto the diamond in celebration. The candy literally rained down from the stands, a marketing moment so perfect it seemed scripted. For a while, the Reggie bar was everywhere. It was more than candy, it was memorabilia, a piece of baseball history you could eat. But like so many things tied to celebrity, its popularity faded as Jackson's career moved on. By the early 1980s, the bar was discontinued, remembered mostly by Yankee fans and collectors who saved unopened wrappers as keepsakes. Today, the Reggie bar lives on as a symbol of a unique time when candy and sports collided. For fans who were there, unwrapping one felt like holding a little piece of Yankee Stadium in your hand. And from a candy built on baseball glory, we turn to one that Hershey hoped would rival the Kit Kat, but ended up forgotten instead. Point 9. Hershey's Bar None. In the candy aisle of the late 1980s, Hershey had a bold idea. Why let Kit Kat have all the fun with chocolate-covered wafers? In 1987, they launched Bar None, a candy bar designed to tame the chocolate beastie. Bar None was a decadent treat, a chocolate-covered wafer layered with chocolate filling, then topped with peanuts, all wrapped in a thick coat of Hershey's milk chocolate. It was rich, crunchy, and indulgent, a candy that promised more chocolate than any competitor. For a short while, it looked like Hershey had a real contender on its hands. The commercials were catchy, and fans loved the texture. Many remember buying them from vending machines, or pulling one from a Halloween haul and feeling like they'd scored something special. It was the kind of candy bar that felt like it belonged in the same league as Snickers or Kit Kat. But Bar None faced a problem. It never found its identity. In the 1990s, Hershey reformulated the bar, splitting it into twin sticks in an attempt to boost sales. Loyal fans were disappointed, and newcomers weren't impressed. Without a clear place in the crowded candy aisle, Bar None slowly disappeared. By 1997, Hershey quietly discontinued it in the U.S. For those who remember it, Bar None feels like a hidden gem, the candy bar that could have been a classic but instead faded into obscurity. Collectors and candy enthusiasts still talk about it, sometimes even hunting down rare reproductions made by smaller companies. But the original Hershey's Bar None remains a lost treasure of the late 80s and 90s. And from a bar that failed to compete with the big players, we move to one that tried to win hearts by going bigger, literally over a foot long. Point 10. Marathon Bar. Back in the 1970s, candy makers believed that bigger was better. And few candy bars captured that spirit more than the Marathon Bar. Introduced by Mars in 1973, the Marathon Bar was unlike anything else on the shelves. A long, braided rope of chewy caramel coated in rich milk chocolate. What made it unforgettable wasn't just the taste, it was the size. At 8 full inches long, the Marathon Bar proudly advertised its length right on the package, complete with a ruler printed across the wrapper. For kids, it felt like you were getting more candy than ever before, a true bang for your buck in an era when candy was still just a few cents. Commercials leaned heavily on the theme of endurance. One featured a cowboy mascot named Quick Carl, who always came up short, and Marathon John, who would smugly enjoy his giant bar. The message was clear. This wasn't a candy for a quick bite, it was a candy to last. And it did last. The chewy caramel made each bite take a while, stretching out the treat in a way that kids loved. For a whole generation, the Marathon bar wasn't just candy, it was a challenge, a test of patience, and a treat that seemed to go on forever. But by 1981, the Marathon bar quietly disappeared from shelves. Rumors swirled that it was too expensive to make, or that its popularity never matched Mars' bigger hits like Snickers and Milky Way. Whatever the reason, the braided bar was gone, leaving behind nothing but memories and a few saved wrappers tucked away in scrapbooks. Today, collectors and candy fans still talk about the Marathon bar with almost mythical reverence. A candy that seemed larger than life and vanished all too soon. And from a bar that bragged about size, we moved to one that embraced silliness, turning candy into garbage kids couldn't get enough of. Point 11. Garbage candy. In the 1980s and 90s, candy wasn't just about flavor, it was about fun. And few treats captured that spirit better than garbage candy. Sold in tiny, colorful plastic trash cans, each filled with little candy pieces shaped like bottles, cans, and wads of garbage, it turned snacking into pure playground entertainment. Kids loved it because it was different. You didn't just rip open a wrapper, you lifted the lid of a miniature garbage can to find your stash of sweets inside. The candy itself was nothing fancy, usually small pressed sugar shapes, but the packaging made it unforgettable. After finishing the candy, kids often kept the little trash cans to use as toys, pencil toppers, or secret hiding spots for tiny treasures. For parents, though, garbage candy wasn't always charming. Some complained that it glorified bad habits, encouraging kids to treat garbage like something fun. Others grumbled about the mess, since the small pieces often spilled everywhere. But for children of the era, that was exactly what made it cool. It felt mischievous, like eating something you weren't supposed to. By the late 1990s, garbage candy started to vanish from store shelves, a victim of shifting tastes and parents' concerns. Candy marketing was moving away from gross-out humor and into brighter, more wholesome packaging. The little trash cans became a relic of a more playful, chaotic candy era. Today, just the sight of a garbage candy container can bring back a flood of memories. Trading them at lunch, hiding them in a desk at school, or proudly lining them up like trophies. It wasn't really about the taste, it was about the fun. And from a candy remembered for its quirky packaging, we moved to one that won fans with bold flavor, and now sells for shocking prices online after disappearing too soon. Point 12. Altoid Sours. In the early 2000s, candy aisles got a jolt of flavor with the arrival of Altoid Sours. Packaged in the same iconic metal tins as the classic, curiously strong mints, these little discs came in bold flavors like tangerine, raspberry, apple, and citrus. But instead of breath freshening, they delivered a punch of mouth-puckering sourness that kids and teens couldn't get enough of. Part of their magic was the packaging. Those metal tins felt grown-up, sturdy, and collectible. Unlike a paper wrapper you tossed away, an Altoid sour tin stuck around, perfect for holding coins, guitar picks, or tiny keepsakes long after the candy was gone. Many people still have an empty tin tucked away in a drawer somewhere, a reminder of high school or college days. The flavors themselves were strong, tart, and addictive. Fans quickly developed favorites. The tangerine flavor in particular became legendary. It wasn't unusual to see groups of friends passing around a tin, daring each other to handle the sour kick. But just as quickly as they appeared, Altoid sours vanished. By the mid-2000s, sales reportedly dipped, and the brand's owner decided to discontinue them. For fans, it was a heartbreak. Petitions popped up online, with thousands begging for their return. Today, unopened tins of Altoid sours sell for shocking prices on auction sites, sometimes reaching $100 or more, proof of how deeply missed they are. For many, Altoid sours were more than candy. They were a part of growing up in the 2000s, a pocket-sized treasure that's now gone forever. And from a candy remembered for its sour punch, we turn to one straight out of Willy Wonka's world, a treat that changed flavors, then disappeared without a trace. Point 13. Wonka Oompas. When it came to candy brands, few sparked the imagination like Willy Wonka. Inspired by Roald Dahl's beloved story, the Wonka line brought whimsy and playfulness to the candy aisle. And among its earliest creations were Oompas, a candy that carried the magic of the chocolate factory into real life. Launched in the early 1970s, Oompas were originally peanut butter-filled candies coated in chocolate. Imagine a giant M&M with a soft, creamy center. That was the first version of Oompas. They were rich, satisfying, and a little bit different from anything else on the market. For a while, they had a loyal following, especially among peanut butter lovers who wanted something new. But by the 1980s, the formula changed. Wonka reimagined Oompas as fruit-flavored candies, a mix of tangy tastes that looked more like Skittles. The problem was, by changing direction, the candy lost its identity. Fans of the peanut butter version were disappointed, while the fruity Oompas struggled to stand out against competitors. Without a strong niche, Oompas quietly faded from store shelves. Still, the very name Oompas carries nostalgia. It connected kids directly to the world of Willy Wonka, a fantasy where candy was supposed to be larger than life, surprising and magical. For those who were lucky enough to try them, unwrapping a bag of Oompas felt like stepping into the story, if only for a moment. Today, Oompas are a forgotten piece of the Wonka candy legacy, overshadowed by nerds, runts, and gobstoppers. But for a small generation of kids, they were proof that candy could be as imaginative as the books and movies that inspired them. And from a candy tied to pure imagination, we move to one that was pure mischief. Bubblegum disguised as powder in a tiny plastic jug. Point 14. Hubba Bubba Bubble Jug. If you grew up in the 90s or early 2000s, chances are you remember a candy that made no sense, yet was impossible to resist. Hubba Bubba Bubble Jug. At first glance, it looked like a miniature plastic milk jug, filled not with liquid, but with fine, brightly colored powder. And here's the twist. That powder wasn't just candy, it turned into bubblegum. The magic was half the fun. You'd pour a little powder into your mouth, and as you chewed, the grains stuck together, slowly transforming into a chewy wad of gum. The process felt messy, weird, and kind of rebellious, which is exactly why kids loved it. Playground dares often involved pouring in way too much at once, puffing cheeks full of neon gum, and showing off with giant bubbles. Hubba Bubba, already famous for its soft, easy-to-chew gum, hit gold with Bubble Jug because it wasn't just gum, it was an experience. The packaging alone made it collectible. Kids would carry those little jugs in their backpacks, pull them out at lunch, and instantly become the center of attention. But like so many novelty candies, Bubble Jug didn't last. By the mid-2000s, it began disappearing from store shelves. Some parents disliked the messy powder, while others worried about the choking hazard. Over time, it was quietly discontinued, leaving only memories and the occasional vintage jug popping up on auction sites. For many, Hubba Bubba Bubble Jug perfectly captures the playful, experimental spirit of 90s candy. It was strange, fun, and a little chaotic, just like childhood itself. And from a gum that started as powder, we moved to one that turned snacking into an interactive art project, drawing your own tattoos with edible ink. Point 15. Candy cigarettes. There was a time in America when pretending to be grown-up meant puffing on a candy cigarette. For decades, candy cigarettes were a staple of childhood, sold in bright paper packs that looked almost identical to real cigarettes. Kids could bite off the filter, blow imaginary smoke rings, and feel like miniature adults for just a few cents. Candy cigarettes first appeared in the early 20th century, riding the wave of cigarette popularity in American culture. They were marketed with playful slogans like, "Just like Daddy smokes," and became a common feature in convenience stores, grocery aisles, and Halloween hauls. For kids, they were fun, rebellious, and a little bit naughty, an edible taste of adulthood. But as decades passed, the public's perception of smoking began to change. Health campaigns in the 1960s and 70s highlighted the dangers of cigarettes, and suddenly a candy that mimicked smoking felt inappropriate. By the late 20th century, candy cigarettes faced mounting criticism. Many schools and parents began banning them, and several states restricted sales entirely. What was once a harmless novelty became controversial overnight. For those who remember them, candy cigarettes are bittersweet nostalgia. They represent a simpler time, when children could play adult in a purely harmless way, and also a cultural shift, showing how society began to take health and safety more seriously. Today, while some small brands still produce them under different names, the iconic classic packs that look just like the real thing are long gone. And from a candy that mimicked adult habits, we move to a treat inspired by a king himself, a limited edition peanut butter and banana cup, lost to time but still beloved in memory. Point 16. Reese's Peanut Butter and Banana Cream Cups. Imagine combining two iconic flavors, peanut butter and banana. That's exactly what Reese's attempted in 2007 with their peanut butter and banana cream cups, a limited edition tribute to Elvis Presley's favorite snack. For candy lovers and Elvis fans alike, it seemed like a dream come true. The candy was rich and creamy, featuring Reese's signature peanut butter paired with a smooth banana-flavored filling, all coated in milk chocolate. It had the familiar shape of a Reese's cup, but the flavor twist made each bite feel special, indulgent, and a little decadent, just like the king himself might have enjoyed. For fans, it was more than a novelty. The product captured the imagination, evoking the glamour of 1950s rock and roll, the eccentric tastes of Elvis, and a taste that was both nostalgic and adventurous. Social media posts and blogs quickly celebrated the release, sharing photos and excited reviews. People stocked up, hoping it would stay around forever. But, as with many limited edition treats, time was short. Once the promotional period ended, Reese's pulled the cups from shelves, leaving fans longing for another taste. Even today, some candy enthusiasts try to recreate the flavor at home, but nothing compares to the original. The Reese's Peanut Butter and Banana Cream Cups remain a reminder of a moment when candy could celebrate pop culture, celebrity, and nostalgia all at once. It was a fleeting indulgence, a delicious memory frozen in time. And from a candy inspired by music royalty, we move to one that experimented with shape and design, only to vanish quietly: Hershey's Swoops. Point 17. Hershey's Swoops. In the early 2000s, Hershey tried something completely new and a little daring. Enter Hershey's Swoops, chocolate pieces shaped like delicate, curved slices instead of the classic bar. Available in milk chocolate, cookies, and cream, and special seasonal flavors, Swoops were designed to feel elegant, playful, and easy to snack on. For kids and adults alike, the packaging and shape were intriguing. The thin, crescent-shaped chocolates fit neatly in your hand, and the curve made them perfect for stacking, arranging, or even just popping in your mouth one by one. Hershey marketed Swoops as a modern, stylish way to enjoy chocolate. A little sophisticated, a little fun. Despite the innovation, Swoops struggled to find a lasting audience. The novelty was exciting at first, but many chocolate lovers preferred the familiar bar. By 2006, Hershey quietly discontinued the line, leaving behind a small but devoted group of fans who still remember the unique shape and melt-in-your-mouth texture. For those who enjoyed them, Hershey's Swoops were more than candy. They were an experiment in reimagining a classic treat. They represent a time when candy companies were willing to take risks, even if the market wasn't ready to embrace something so different. Today, collectors and nostalgic candy fans still reminisce about Swoops, often hunting down rare tins or unopened packs online. It's a reminder that even in a world of mass-produced treats, Sometimes it's the bold experiments that leave the strongest memories. And from a candy that dared to be different, we move to one that combined candy and chewing gum in a mind-bending formula. Razzles. Point 18. Razzles. If you ever wanted candy that could transform before your very eyes, Razzles were the answer. Introduced in the 1960s, Razzles were a unique creation. A sweet treat that started as candy and then magically turned into chewing gum as you chewed. It was a fun, interactive experience that fascinated kids and teens alike. The original Razzles were fruit-flavored, with bold tastes like raspberry, orange, and lemon. You'd pop one in your mouth, savor the sweet candy flavor for a few moments, and then, surprise! It became gum. It was the perfect combination of two childhood favorites in a single, whimsical package. Razzles became a staple in lunchboxes, trick-or-treat bags, and pocket stashes. But the candy we remember from the 1960s and early 70s isn't exactly the same as the Razzles that survived later decades. Changes in food regulations led to the removal of certain artificial dyes and ingredients, slightly altering the taste and texture of the original formula. For purists, nothing could match the flavor and chewiness of the very first Razzles, creating a sense of nostalgia for a candy that had technically changed over time. Even so, Razzles remain one of the most inventive candies of the modern era, remembered for their playful twist on expectations. They weren't just something to eat. They were an experience, a little magical trick hiding in a small wrapper. And from a candy that magically transforms, we move to one that combined play and danger, toy guns that fired jawbreaker-sized candies. Point 19. Jawbreaker guns. In the 1960s and 70s, candy wasn't just something you ate, it could also be a toy. And few creations captured that idea better than jawbreaker guns. These plastic toy pistols fired tiny jawbreaker candies, combining playtime and snack time in one explosive experience. Kids could aim, fire, and then enjoy a hard, crunchy candy, all in one motion. For children, jawbreaker guns were irresistible. The thrill of pretending to shoot your friends, safely of course, while also getting a sweet reward made them a playground favorite. The candy itself was simple, small, hard jawbreakers that lasted forever and were perfect for long-lasting fun. But the appeal wasn't just the taste, it was the novelty. Few other candies offered both play and snack in the same package. However, safety concerns eventually caught up with the novelty. Parents worried that the candy pieces could be swallowed too quickly, and the plastic guns themselves were deemed a potential hazard. Schools began banning them, and retailers followed suit. Despite their popularity, jawbreaker guns were quietly pulled from the shelves, leaving only memories for those who had grown up firing candy at friends. Today, jawbreaker guns are a symbol of an era when candy could be wild, inventive, and a little dangerous. For adults who remember them, they're a nostalgic reminder of playgrounds, summer afternoons, and the endless imagination of childhood. And from a candy that mixed danger and fun, we move to a small, fruity treat that was altered forever by a flavor swap: Lime Skittles. Point 20. Lime Skittles, Original Flavor Pack. For many candy lovers, Skittles are the rainbow of childhood, a small, chewy burst of fruit flavor in every colorful piece. But not all Skittles were created equal. For decades, the green Skittle in the original US packs was lime-flavored, a tart and tangy bite that balanced perfectly with the other fruity colors. Then, in 2013, Mars made a surprising change. They swapped lime for green apple. While it may have seemed like a minor adjustment, the reaction was anything but small. Fans erupted online with petitions, social media posts, and passionate pleas to bring back the original flavor. Many people claimed they could never enjoy Skittles the same way again. The original lime had been part of their childhood memory, a taste that defined the candy for decades. The story of Lime Skittles is a reminder of just how deeply candy is tied to nostalgia. A single flavor change, even one intended to modernize a product, can create a cultural uproar. In response to fan demand, Mars eventually reintroduced lime Skittles in 2021 as part of a Taste the Rainbow campaign, proving that some flavors are too iconic to remain gone forever. For anyone who grew up with lime Skittles, the memory of that tangy green candy evokes school lunches, trick-or-treat bags, and afternoons spent trading flavors with friends. It's proof that sometimes the smallest changes in candy can have the biggest emotional impact. And with that, our journey through 15 banned and discontinued American candies comes to a close, each one a sweet, and sometimes shocking, piece of nostalgia. And there you have it, 20 banned, discontinued, and forgotten American candies that shaped our childhoods, sparked our imaginations, and sometimes even shocked us. From the magical Kinder Surprise egg that we could only dream of, to tangy lime Skittles that left a lasting impression, each candy tells a story, not just of flavor, but of the culture, trends, and memories of America through the decades. Candy is more than just sugar. It's a snapshot of a time, a way to taste nostalgia, and a bridge connecting generations. Every wrapper, every bite, every bright-colored piece carries a memory of school lunches, corner stores, Halloween hauls, and summer afternoons spent trading with friends. And even if these treats no longer exist on shelves, their stories remain alive in our hearts. If you enjoyed this trip down memory lane, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss a journey into America's sweet, strange, and surprising past. There are countless more candies, snacks, and nostalgic treasures waiting to be rediscovered, and we'll explore them together, one bite at a time. Thank you for joining us, and remember, sometimes the sweetest memories aren't found in the present, but in the candies we once loved and the stories they left behind.